Good morning, everybody. I have just returned from fabulous 5 weeks in Cape Town. And while I was there, I decided that I would be doing a whole lot of articles on my website on autoimmune conditions. And so I would really suggest that anybody who thinks they may have an autoimmune condition or who knows they have an autoimmune condition, I would really, really ask you to go over to my website and to read the few articles that I have put up. And the reason I say this is because the last paragraph of my last article is headed, "Finding Hope Where Once There Was None." And I say this because when you have an autoimmune condition and you go to the doctors, they basically tell you that there are no known cures for autoimmune conditions, and you tend to land up with drugs that address your symptoms. So whatever the symptoms are, each of the autoimmune conditions comes with their own set of symptoms. You get immunosuppressant drugs, which suppress your immune system. And this alone can be a little bit concerning, especially when we have things like the coronavirus, which has been going around. And with a suppressed immune system, obviously, it makes you a lot more susceptible to getting sick. So I go into explaining that once you have been diagnosed with an autoimmune condition and you go off to a functional medicine practitioner, they start to dig a little deeper and to start finding out what actually is going on. What is the underlying root cause of your autoimmune condition? And this really is fascinating and something that people need to understand when you have an autoimmune condition, because one of the things we know is the immune system is attacking itself. So it's attacking healthy tissue. Now, if you look at it from just a conventional medical approach, the view is almost that the immune system has suddenly gone crazy and it's just suddenly attacking itself. But when you go and you start digging a lot deeper, you start to find that the immune system was already attacking something else, and it's become hypervigilant. So in attacking something else, it's landed up either getting confused, which is molecular mimicry, which I'll explain in a minute, or basically you've got loads of toxins, chemicals, pathogens, things that have initiated an immune response, getting out of the GI tract into the blood system. And these things are docking onto healthy tissue. And then the immune system is seeing the healthy tissue with these pathogens, chemicals, toxins attached to them. And the immune system starts to respond. And it responds with all the typical things that an immune system does. One of the things is inflammation. And when you have an immune response, you'll end up having the symptoms that come with an immune response, which is pain, swelling, discomfort. All the symptoms that people feel when they get sick are caused by an immune response. And it's actually a way of the immune system saying to you, listen, I'm busy here doing something for you. I'm clearing your body of an infection. I'm getting rid of something that's causing you to be ill. And while I'm doing this, you need to rest, drink lots of water, eat good nutrition, but don't try and suppress the symptoms. Don't try and get rid of the symptoms, because that's actually your immune system telling you, it's alerting you to the fact that it's doing something for you. So what happens when you've got an autoimmune condition and you land up taking a whole host of pharmaceutical drugs that make your symptoms feel much better? Basically, the drugs have gone and they are suppressing your immune system. So your immune system is no longer responding. It is an immune response that is making people feel ill. So now your immune system has been completely suppressed. You're not feeling the symptoms, but the underlying root cause of why your immune system was reacting in the first place, whether you've got viruses, parasites, other pathogens, you've got chemical toxins, environmental toxins, whatever it is that your immune system is reacting to remains if you don't address them. The only difference now is that you are unaware that your immune system is still continuing, or that these things that are harming your body are still there, because you are now no longer able to feel. So you feel healthy, you feel much better, but in truth, something is still going on in the body. So what I like to explain to people is, when you have an autoimmune condition, one of the first things that a doctor will look for are called ANA, anti-nuclear antibodies. The difference between antibodies are that the normal antibodies attack enemy. Anti-nuclear antibodies are attacking your own healthy tissue. If you get a positive ANA test, it doesn't mean you're going to go on to develop an autoimmune condition. And if you have an autoimmune condition, you may get a negative ANA test. So it helps to an extent, but that's not the be all and end all. And again, the ANA positive test tends to be non-specific. So you find out that you've got these anti-nuclear antibodies circulating, which means they're possibly attacking healthy tissue, but they're non-specific. So you don't know whether you've got lupus, Sjogren's, rheumatoid arthritis, or any one of the Hashimoto's. You don't know what autoimmune condition you've got. So when a person comes to me, one of the first things we do, and this I have to mention somebody called Alessio Fasano, a medical doctor who is one of the top specialists in the world who addresses autoimmune conditions. And he says that there are 3 things that have to exist for a person to have an autoimmune condition. Number 1 is a genetic susceptibility. So what we mean is that your genetically, your immune system tends to be hypervigilant. So in other words, it's reacting to an enemy, but it's become hypervigilant, and it's also turning on healthy tissue. There's a genetic component to that. Then you need to have a trigger. So what is causing your immune system to become reactive in the first place? It's very, very unlikely, and I've done a lot of studies, and I don't even believe it happens, where you just simply get an immune system that out of nowhere and for no reason suddenly starts to attack healthy tissue. There's something that is causing your immune system to become reactive in the first place. So this is what Alessio Fasano says. 1, genetic predisposition to having a hypervigilant immune system. 2, something that has triggered the immune system to become reactive in the first place. And 3 is a leaky gut. So again, I did a 3-day convention recently on the link between autoimmunity and leaky gut. And I've written an article on that as well, because there is a big thought process out there that if you do not have a leaky gut, you cannot have an autoimmune condition. So that's very interesting. So I'm going to give you an example of what that means. We know that the GI tract starts at the top here, and it runs all the way down to the anal canal. And it has a gut lining, and that gut lining is very, very strong. And the purpose of the gut lining is to keep everything inside the GI tract, So what you don't want is undigested food particles and all kinds of toxins that you may have in your GI tract, from environmental toxins, from heavy metals, mercury, aluminum. You get mercury when you eat your fish. And have you got certain toxins? Have you got viruses, whole host of bacteria that come into our system when we eat food? We've got the gut microbiome is huge. We have trillions and trillions of microbes living in our gut. And do we want those escaping from our gut and getting into our bloodstream? No. So what happens with a leaky gut is something inside the gut starts to escape into the bloodstream. And how I explain a leaky gut, and it's in my article, is that think of a sieve. When you put things in a sieve, the holes are very, very, very small. So they're catching in the sieve the things that you don't want in your cake, for example. So now that's the same with the gut lining. The gut lining has got what we call tight junctions, and these stay closed, and they only open a tiny, tiny amount and only at certain times to let your digested food particles, so the things that have been broken down, your carbs, your amino acids, your glucose, your fatty acids, and your nutrients, the body needs them. So once your small intestine, once digestion has finally taken place, and these are ready to go into your bloodstream, the tight junctions are just small enough to let these tiny particles to get into your system, and then they go around your body in the bloodstream, which is basically like a highway, which carries things to the places they needed, and then deposits these things into the cells where you may need glucose, protein, etc., your amino acids. But what happens is if you've got, for example, I'll give you the example of the gliadin protein in gluten. If your gluten hasn't broken down properly and you land up getting gluten in the bloodstream, the immune system doesn't recognize it because it's not supposed to be in your bloodstream. So now your immune system looks at this and thinks, wow, this is an enemy. I better start attacking it. So it starts to attack the gliadin protein. What it does is where you've got molecular mimicry, it starts to look at things in the body that resemble gliadin. And there is an enzyme called transglutaminase, which is found predominantly in the thyroid. So once your immune system is attacking the gliadin, it starts to get a little bit confused and it thinks, I better attack this in the thyroid. And that's how you land up with Hashimoto's. So does it not make sense that what you need to do is stop the gliadin getting into your bloodstream? Once you stop that getting into the bloodstream, the immune system stops to respond to it. And then once it's no longer responding and it's calming down, it stops attacking the thyroid. So, and there are so many, many, many autoimmune conditions. I think in the last lecture I did, they're now recognizing as many as 200 autoimmune conditions. And again, I'm going to give you an example. I was chatting to someone recently who said to me that every time he eats food, instead of the glucose levels in his blood going up, they're plummeting. Now, the first thing I went to do was research autoimmune condition because I thought, how on earth does your blood glucose levels go down when you've just eaten a meal? They always go up. And I discovered an autoimmune condition, which is attacking certain of the insulin in the pancreas, and it's causing it's an autoimmune condition. And I wrote to him and I said, go and have these checked and see if you've got antibodies to these particular proteins and see whether that's what's causing your blood glucose levels to drop. And I had another client and I found an autoimmune condition again that I didn't know existed. And it's when your body's making antibodies to the parietal cells, which can cause what's something called pernicious anemia, fatigue. It causes gastritis. So, over and above the things that we know, like lupus and rheumatoid arthritis and ankylosing spondylitis and all these things, there are so many other autoimmune conditions. And people are feeling terrible. They've got terrible symptoms. And for me, I find it's like a puzzle. So when people come to see me, one of the first things I do is I love the testing of the Cyrex labs. And one of the first things I do when we suspect that there could be an autoimmune condition is the test that looks to see whether the body is making autoantibodies, the antinuclear antibodies. Is the body making antibodies to healthy tissue? Once you find that the body is doing that, then I go backwards and I go and research molecular mimicry. What are the various chemicals, toxins, bacteria? So for example, Klebsiella is a bacteria in the gut. Now, if you look at the link between Klebsiella and ankylosing spondylitis, it's basically a very, very recognized connection. And there's loads of scientific papers explaining it. So you find that there are links with with mercury, aluminium, the environmental toxins that your body may be building antibodies to. And the other phenomenon that happens, so the one is called molecular mimicry, where the body's making antibodies to something, and it gets confused with healthy tissue that very, very closely resembles that molecular structure. The other thing that happens is that these toxins, pathogens that escape the gut, the leaky gut, and get into your bloodstream, many of them dock onto healthy tissue. So they now attach themselves to maybe joint tissue or to the thyroid. And once they do this, the immune system sees this as something it needs to decontaminate and clear up. So it starts to launch an attack against this. And when we have an immune response, we have inflammation, and we have all the symptoms that we get when we're sick, when we're not feeling well. And if you've got a consistently leaky gut, and if these pathogens or toxins or whatever they are continuously leaking into your system, you're going to have a continual inflammatory response, and you're going to be feeling sick with all the different symptoms. And this is lupus, it can be multiple sclerosis. Each person's autoimmune condition depends on what's leaking into the bloodstream, where these things are docking, or what molecular mimicry is occurring. So I hope I've explained that to you, because I find it myself fascinating. I find it like a jigsaw puzzle, and I love it when people come to me and we start trying to find out what's going on. It's very, very interesting and fascinating. And it's amazing to have people who feel terrible start to do certain things that make them really feel so much better. And I've written an article on the autoimmune protocol, and I took it predominantly from Tom O'Brien's book, The Autoimmune Fix, and I tried to just summarize a lot of it in an article, just so that people can start to look at the approach. And the approach is always going to be starting with the gut. So we take away all the inflammatory foods, and those are typically gluten, dairy, sugar. And again, it doesn't mean that people necessarily have a gluten intolerance or a dairy intolerance, but while your gut is in a situation where you've got a lot of things going on, you have leaky gut, what you need to do is take away all the foods that can be causing an issue. You need to be improving the overall gut microbiome, and you definitely need to be focusing on fixing a leaky gut. So what I'm suggesting for all of you is, please, if you are concerned that you may have an autoimmune condition, or you have an autoimmune condition and you're just feeling fed up and you don't know where to go to now, go and read my articles. And I do have a contact me where I say, let's have a half an hour free chat and let's discuss what can be going on with you. You don't have to consult me. I'm always happy just to have a chat with people and suggest a direction that they themselves go and look at. And of course, if you do want to, have some advice from me, I'm always happy to help. But I hope you found my chat interesting, and I just wanted to discuss it because I've written a few articles, and I'm about to do today my final article on autoimmune conditions, and it's under my TT tips. I find I've been neglecting that one aspect of my website. So I'm just putting up 10 very easy tips to follow. So before you go see your doctor, or if you've already consulted a practitioner, you're dealing with an autoimmune condition, go and look at my tips on what other things you can be doing in your own life to make you just feel so much better. And on that note, I'm going to say goodbye. Look out for my articles. I'm going to be publishing a lot more, writing a lot more. I've joined lots of exciting magazines this year. So I'm going to be writing loads of interesting articles. And I always say, ask me questions. Your health is in your hands. I go there. I'm sorry, I often lose interest because I find that it's always just a very one line of communication. I'm putting things out there, but I so would love you to give me feedback or to ask me questions. I promise you that I can either help you or I can direct you so that you can find the help. So I'm going to take one more sip of my horrible drink of reishi mushroom and say goodbye, and let's chat again soon.